Hello and welcome back to my bookish channel, where today I'm facing a different corner of the room. This is where all my friends who are into minimalism have complete conniptions. Never mind. I'm having coffee, and I've got socks sleeping down there, and I've actually found a slightly more springish shirt because I'm determined that the weather's going to be better and not as dismal as it's been for the rest of this week. While I'm drinking coffee, I should point out to you something from yesterday. This is my favourite mug in the world, and Jeremy dropped it yesterday and broke it into about 17 pieces. Now, he went off after a bit of a scene about this. He went off and repaired it, bless him. Oh, I don't know if you, oh shit. I don't know if you can see um, the invisible mending that he did. There's thick gobbets of some kind of weird glue that looks like custard lining all the cracks. It's like the old uh, Leonard Cohen song, isn't it? About where he sang about the cracks of the floors where that lets the light in. These are the custardy cracks in the smashed mug that lets the tea drip out, I think. Although it seems to be watertight, it is very funny. Look at that. He could have his own YouTube channel on invisible mending. I will love this all the more, I think. It came from Kendall's, the fancy department store in town, which is about to disappear, I think, forever. I can hear drilling from next door, which is really annoying. I hope you can't hear that. Okay. It's so funny. Don't tell him I was laughing at his repairs. He's done a wonderful job. Now, first thing to tell you is to hop over to my Patreon channel, patreon.com, and then my name slash my name. Paul Mars, Magrs with a silent G. I must remind people it's a silent G if you're wondering how to pronounce my name. Do go and subscribe to my Patreon. It costs pennies, and I'm doing extra stuff on there. I have been for a number of years, mostly text-based and pictures in recent years, but I am doing videos now, and I think what I'm going to do is do some reading. I'm going to read some stuff out, which will be nice, hopefully for you. The rest of this video, I want to talk about my favourite books of the year so far. It's almost the end of March. We're halfway through March, so that the world is moving on very quickly. The world's moving fast. Time is going by. And I've read a pile of stuff. I'm not going to talk about the shit ones. Hang on. I shouldn't swear on this, but certain books I will not be talking about. These are consigned to a charity shop. Yuck. This is childish. This I really didn't like. There's lots of hype about this. I thought it was awful, twee. And this is just a big wodge of somebody else's research, um, stitched into, cut and pasted into the voices of characters. But I'm not going to talk about books I don't like. I did read a Jodi Picoult years ago that I quite liked. I liked it, The Storyteller, but I don't know what that was. This is the difficulty with book clubs. I love our book club, but you have to let other people choose as well, which is um, like, it's nice having other people choose books. And sometimes there's some lovely surprises. Sometimes you get some fantastic things, but you are open to terrible choices as well. It's an interesting topic. You just have to go with it and enjoy book club. We used to have quite drunken book clubs, and they were hilarious. But and I don't think we drink now at book club. I've not drank for almost 9 months. I've not had a drop of alcohol for 9 months. Hooray for me! And that's kind of made them more sober and more bookish in some ways. Although we do laugh a lot in book club. I should do a broadcast from book club at some point on YouTube so you can meet that gang if they're willing. We have trips out, we go to the theatre, we do all sorts as book club. We have dinner. Right, now, books from this year. These aren't in order, and they're not in any particular order. January, February, and some of March. Leslie Howarth, Maphead. Now, I've been aware of this book since the late 80s, I think. It's a very peculiar science fiction novel for kids. very peculiar, very sophisticated, a kind of man who fell to earth um, for kids. Very, very clever. Then a Cassie Bowen takes witch lessons. This is a scholastic book. Now, this is Cameron Chaney's fault. Cameron, who has a fantastic um, YouTube series and a Patreon, The Library Macabre. Now, I was watching his videos for much of last year. I think I discovered them in the summer, and he specializes in horror, in middle grade fiction, in things like Goosebumps. So there's a huge nostalgia factor because he's about the age of my little sister, to whom I read Goosebumps and all those books in the 90s. These scholastic books, of course, are American, and we didn't really get them here. We got some of them. We had scholastic books in our book club, and but not quite like this. This is by Anna Gross-Nickel-Hines, and it's a book about bullying. Essentially, it's a really lovely, quite short novel. They're so well written, these books. That's what I can't get over. I've read a couple now. They're Apple paperbacks published by Scholastic in the 80s, I think going back into the 70s. And Cameron mentioned them, and I'd picked this one up on a trip to the States a few years ago when I had another surge of enthusiasm for those kinds of short novels. I hadn't read it till recently, and it just staggers me how well they're done. This is another one, but reprinted in this country, a science fiction scholastic novel called Born into Light, Paul Samuel Jacobs. A kind of another Aliens Amongst Us story. It's kind of not Night of the Living Dead, that's quite different. It's more like the invasion of the body snatchers and people realizing that they're actually aliens, like sleeper agents on Earth. Very odd, very spooky, and wonderful. Early 90s, and I missed out on it completely. As I did this, written and published the year I was born, in the late 60s, The Pig Man, Paul Zindel. Another book, oddly enough, about bullying from the bully's point of view. In the same way that Cassie Bowen is, although she's not the bully, she's best friends with the bullies. And she comes to understand how it's the wrong way of carrying on, how she comes to identify with the person who's different. And in this, we get two teenage characters who befriend, an older, strange fella, and terrible things happen, and it's heartbreaking. Beautiful, really beautiful book. And I wish I'd known it all my life, but I didn't. I've just got to know it this year, and I'll return to it and I'll read more by Zindel because I think he's a marvelous writer on the strength of that. I reread James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room, which I read first in 95 and again in 97, it turns out. It's sexy and dense and chaotic in the sense that you're pitched into these characters' heads and they live crazy, chaotic lives, really. They're figuring things out. It's a very primitive time in terms of what sexuality means. The kind of gay theme to it is something kind of not quite dealt with by the characters because of the time it's written in, the audience it was for, I suppose. Terrible, the struggles that people were put through, tortured by their sexuality, and that's in there. But you do get glimpses of these amazing sexy times that the two fellas do have. But of course, it's a gay novel of a certain era, the early 60s, I think, or late 50s. And so it has to be tragic, as they all did for a long time. But the tragedy rings true, and it's a really lovely book. And I'd forgotten so much of it, because it was 25 years ago when I read it. Well worth returning to. And, it's the lesson, isn't it? About the books that you carry with you and keep on your shelves. Some of them aren't always worth it, and they're just clutter, but that's all right. Others are complete treasure that you have to remember to go back to. Books change over time. It's not to say that the words in them change behind your back. You change and you come at them differently. I was thinking about Armistead Maupin and his books. And when I first read the first books in the Tales of the City sequence, and those characters were older than me. They were 10 years older. They were living glamorous lives, and um, I grew up. I read them again in my 30s, and they were younger than me, and they seemed naive and um, annoying. And then I was older again, and they were kind of tragic and didn't know what was around the corner. So you change as you return to characters. Characters are kind of bookmarks in your life. Books are stopping points, and you can go back to them. And there's a lot to be learnt from that, I think, from certain writers. And I think Baldwin's one of them, Maupain's one of them. Who else? Margaret Atwood's one of them, actually. I'll talk about her more some other time. Simon and the Witch, I think I talked about this series, this fantastic woman, Margaret Stewart Barry, who came from Darlington. And I bought the whole set of these. I think they're quite rare now, from a charity shop, Bernardo's, in Cheadle. And that was a good day. That shop's been amazing over the years, particular vintage shop. They don't know what they have sometimes with books, and I've found some lovely bargains there. Simon and the Witch is one of those anarchic, fantastic kids' books of a certain era that you don't see so much these days. This was a mind-blowing thing, the psychopath test. I think I've talked about it elsewhere. John Ronson, the first book of his I've read, and I want to read the rest now. It's a great detective story, really, about following up leads. He's a journalist who follows his nose, and he learns all about murderers and mad people in this, and it's quite scary. It's about 15 years ago he wrote it, and he talks about people being prescribed medications, perhaps too much, and the names that mental illnesses were given back in the 70s that we still have. You know, the things that people assume are eternal and true are invented at some point, or construed from reality at some point by experts who later revise their opinions or realize they were wrong. So the things he says, it's good kind of cultural materialism. That's what it is. He talks to the people who were involved in creating lists and checklists and definitions of different kinds of madness. And he talks to people who did kind of crazy experiments, like giving LSD to psychopaths. Amazing stuff. Really interesting. When I get my teeth into nonfiction, I could stay there forever. And I think, what's the point of reading novels, which is, amazing to me. Yep. Anyway, this is the point of reading novels. The things like falling in love with a William Boyd novel, Ordinary Thunderstorms, which, again, a book club book. Didn't think I was going to like it because everybody in it was hateful, really awful characters. And it was so dark and dangerous, the world that the lead character is pitched into by a disaster. When he's almost in the beginning, the first plot beat is that he finds himself with a murder victim, holding a knife in his hand, and he has to go on the run. He has to go underground and gets caught up in this crazy web of characters and terrible circumstances. I absolutely loved it. I read it slowly and absorbedly is the word. I was held in by this book until the very last minute, and then it was time for book club, and we'd all enjoyed it. So I have made sure I've bought more of William Boyd. These hardbacks by people are expensive when they come out, a couple of years. They're pennies by the time things have come out in paperback, in charity shops and eBay and the rest of it. I love picking up those slightly used hardbacks. Nicer than brand new ones, somehow. I like it when the spine is sloping because somebody's worked their way through the whole story before me. I don't know why. I don't know why that's nicer than new books. Arthur and Teddy are coming out. This is part of my business of reading more gay fiction, or reading fiction with gay characters at the heart of it, to try and figure out what I think about representation. There's a lot of rubbish talked about representation and what it means these days, and how people need to see people like them, who look like them, who act like themselves in books. And I've got lots of thoughts about that. I think we go to books to be other people, actually. That's why I always went to read. I think the people saying this stuff are politically motivated, and there's lots of that stuff about. And that's one thing, and that's interesting. But I think in terms of actual readers, I think, we go into books to be a lesbian nun in the 59th century, you know, rather than me. And I thought, well, I'll look at some books where there are characters closer perhaps to me, and see what I think about how people are representing those in novels. And anyway, this quite new novel by Ryan Love, I enjoyed. I think it's nice. I think it's a nice commercial romance, which is amazing to me because when I started reading gay fiction in the late 80s, early 90s, anything with gays or queers in it would be um, literary fiction. It would be sold almost like in medicinal doses, like olive oil used to be at the chemists for pouring down your ear, rather than in kind of lavish quantities because it's just delicious to have on food. I don't know what their analogy is doing. Um, and, it's nice to have gay writers, gay characters, gay love stories in the mainstream. That's what it is. Maybe that's happening at last. Slow happening, but it's there. And I think Arthur and Teddy are coming out, which is about a grandson and a grandfather in this family who come out at the same time, or the grandfather comes out first, and the grandson realizes that he's been hiding from himself. In some ways, it's kind of really obvious stuff. In lots of ways, but the really obvious stuff needs restating now and then, doesn't it? Because we have to introduce people to our own worlds. That's what fiction is, inviting people into a world that they maybe haven't been in before, or ideas they haven't entertained before, seeing their cozy world turned upside down, perhaps. Currently, oh, hang on. The Girl on the 88 Bus by Freya Sampson. I've just finished. This was a present from Rosie. I'm way behind still on my kind of Christmas reading, and the piles of books down there on that chair. I'd read Freya Sampson's first book about the library that's closing down. And this is a similar thing. It's a kind of an older character meets a young woman, and she learns about this amazing backstory he's got and wants to do something for him to save him before it's too late, to restore his dreams to him. It's about an old man who, in the 60s, had this lovely encounter on a bus in London with a young woman who was drawing, and she drew him. And he kept the drawing, but he didn't get a phone number and never saw her again. And has been going on the bus for 60 years to find her again. And this is about the attempts to reunite them. And you get caught up in the lives of all the characters who are part of that quest. And it's just really lovely, life affirming. It's that genre of life affirming romance novels, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially in a rainy March. So she's somebody I will read whenever there's something out. I think there's a new one out now. So she goes alongside my list of people who um, I turn I turn to as if it's a kind of sunny day for vitamin D. This doesn't have any vitamin D in it. This is all um, uh, salt, oddly enough, because that's the publisher. This is Alison Moore's The Lighthouse, which I haven't read before. Um, it was nominated for the Booker. It was a lot of hoo-ha about it at one time. I'm about halfway through. It's for book club next month. Seems a bit gloomy, very meticulous, very depressing, quite strange characters doing small, meticulous, gradual, peculiar things in that kind of literary fiction way. People never quite behave as normal people would, or maybe it's normal people but with something slightly distracted or odd about them. That's what you get, isn't it? Uh, a kind of slightly puzzling world that they live in. So the plot's maybe trying to kick in about halfway through. Things are converging, perhaps. A pair of pants have been left on on the desk of a motel in Germany, and I think probably disaster will ensue because of this pair of erroneous balled up pants. Um, yeah, that's the biggest plot beat we've got to so far. So we'll see. We'll see. I want to finish that, and then I want to move on to I don't know, either a thriller. I want to read the AJ, what's he called? Finn? AJ Finn book that's just come out, or maybe some Fern. Whoops, low battery it says, or maybe some Fern Britain because uh, she's making me laugh on Celebrity Big Brother just now. So we'll see. That's my year so far. Uh, Missing out things that I'm not interested in talking about. That's the kernel of it. There's also lots of picture books, of course, and lots of comics, and I'm not talking about them because my coffee's gone cold, and it's time to return to the real world again, and maybe get some lunch. So I will see you soon. Please do subscribe and click like and leave your comments, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Okay, bye bye.